Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams,
Yes,
are you
sir.
there? You're back.
Yes, I am, brother. How are you, brother David? Rocking you.
Rocking you. Well, let's get into it, right? Millions
sir.
of dollars in capital funds in the Flatbush Caribbean Cajun market to advance Caribbean business owners from vendor space to physical locations. I want to talk about that because I drove past there about 2 days ago. I saw the nice building going up in the middle of the corner of Cajun and Flatbush, and I thought, wow, I remember when I used to go and get coconut water from the guy at the corner. So when I saw the big elaborate building, I'm saying, will I be able to go and get coconut water from the guy at the corner still?
And it should. The project was all about moving the space, building affordable housing, and then cycling the vendors back into the space. Because the goal was to make sure that you don't displace the vendors, keep them as part of the place. They had a temporary location. They were also given some infrastructure around how to build out businesses. Because the goal is that you don't want people just to stay in small shop areas. We want to build empires. And by giving people the proper skill set, support, and infrastructure, they can go after those major procurement dollars that I always talk about that the city purchases for goods and services. And so this should be a successful plan. We're going to cycle back and find out how things are going. It was put in place by Meredith Marshall and his builders, and we're going to find out how that's moving along at this time.
Let's talk a little bit about reimbursements to Caribbean businesses who was financially hurt by the NYPD enforcement agency's discrimination.
Tell me when you say that, drill down on that for me.
Okay, so you've got businesses that have been affected in one way or another, right? And you've got things that have happened maybe in front of some businesses that have brought the business down. And I think that you're leading the fight in setting up conferences and meetings between the NYPD and the black and brown persons in the community who are connected to those businesses to bring some kind of solution to it.
Yeah, no, here's what's happening. I understand what you're asking. Here's what's happening. Our black and brown and Caribbean nightlife establishment they have been really crippled by the NYPD, SLA, and other entities. What they're doing, they're coming in, they're hitting them with unjust fines, they're having them lose their liquor license. This has been happening all over the city. And we have found that it's a disproportionate impact on black and brown businesses. And so what we are saying to the SLA, if you receive an infraction that is a city type infraction that has nothing to do with your selling of alcohol, this has now been used against you to lose your liquor license on the state level. It's almost as though you doubly penalizing people. And we're seeing that this is a weapon being used to close down these businesses. That is something I'm going to put a halt to as the mayor. When the agency, Brother David, when the agency of the city walks inside your business, you should not have anxiety. You should have a level of calmness because that agency is there to help you keep the doors open. As it stands now, we're doing just the opposite. And so what I'm going to do as mayor, we're going to move away from the immediate giving people citations and fines, not only for nightlife establishments, but all of our businesses. We should go on what I call a 30-day, type of program. If it's a minor infraction that is not dangerous to life, give them 30 days to correct it before issuing a summons. If it's something that will impact life, if it's not corrected, give them 2 weeks. If it's an emergency, give them 24 hours to correct it. But the goal is not to go in with a summons, but to go in and say, listen, correct this issue so we don't have to give you a summons. That's not how we think now.
Let's talk a little bit about your fight for the Caribbean. We have our Caribbean music, we have our Caribbean culture in New York, and there's no other state where it shines like it does in New York. But we've had some problems. We've had our fair share of problems. We had some Juve problems. And you've come to the forefront with Riyadka. You've come to the forefront with Juve when the cop was shot. What do you feel in your gut about how we're going to move forward with our Caribbean culture, especially on Eastern Parkway on Labor Day Monday?
Well, that's so important to me, brother, because it has always been my vision that we should have a Caribbean diaspora museum here in the city to really show the rich culture and the contributions of the Caribbean diaspora to the city and the entire country. And so what my goal is, number one, when the NYPD and others attempted to remove Juve and change the entire West Indian Day Parade, we sat down and pushed forward to not allow that to happen. We brought together stakeholders, the organizers, the police department, the city, because after several shootings, there was a real push to end Juve and really start to change the West Indian Day Parade altogether. And we said, no, there's a long history. Brother, I remember marching in a West Indian Day Parade when I was 15, 16 years old, being a part of that experience, and it's part of our Central Brooklyn. And so now as the borough changes and as the city changes, there's a desire by some to displace these long-term rich traditions, and I'm not going to allow it to happen, but we're going to go one step further. We're going to give Riyadka and the Juve, we're going to give them the infrastructure they need. I'm going to attract a new television deal where it will be televised. This is one of the only major parades and festivals that's not televised. We're going to move to make sure we give them a television deal so they can have the real finance to turn the corner of this parade. We should be bigger than Canada. We should be bigger than what happens in the various Caribbean islands, because we have the accumulation of all of the Caribbean experience right here in Brooklyn and in New York City, and I want to enhance that and make sure that we professionalize the operation by giving them the support that they need.
Sir, we talked earlier about restaurant, bars, and lounges on the sidewalk and in the streets and your support for them. But I forgot to ask you a pertinent question when we were talking about lounges and restaurants and bars and being on the street and being on the sidewalks. Although it's all good and you promote it, we still got a segment of the community that is saying, now we have these things out in the street. We got big rats running. I got to laugh. We got big rats running all over the place, sir. How are you going to deal with this issue? Because I've seen some rats, now the people outside that I haven't seen ever before. How are you going to deal with that issue, sir?
Well, what happened, everyone would tell you that when COVID hit, people were not in their shops, their stores, and their restaurants. And so the entire rodent population decreased because of that, because people were not placing food on the sidewalks and bags. So the presence of rodents is not that presence is not due to the sidewalk cafes.
Okay.
It's due to the streets of now people are back on the streets. They're placing garbage back on the streets. Stores are open. Now, I had a program here at Borough Hall where we did the rat trap. We caught 96 to 100 rats right around Borough Hall. The place was infested with rats. This was a great machine that we used. It was able to trap the rats.
Sir, are you really serious?
Yes, no, I'm serious, brother. and do you know that after we put the plan around Borough Hall, it totally eradicated the rats. You don't see any rats around Borough Hall anymore. And this all came because a group of mothers from NYC came to me and stated that the rats were climbing in their cribs, biting their children, their baby cribs.
Are you serious?
Yes, brother. Yes, no. Rodents are, they carry diseases and they're really dangerous for children. And that's why we put this plan in place. And I'm going to incorporate this throughout the entire city. We don't have a real rat mitigation plan in place. Those little black boxes with the poison inside, those rats are treat that like candy. We're not killing any rats. That's a hustle. People, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars and we don't have a rat mitigation plan. I'm going to put in plan my rat trap program, and trust me, brother.
I like that, the rat trap program. Okay, right. Sir, you know what? You answered that well. I got one more for you. What do you say to the people who are circling all around the city to find a park, but because the bars and stuff are outside now on the you can't find a park? I've drove around a few hours myself to find a park.
No, and it's a balance. We need to reevaluate the program. We need to reevaluate it because remember, it was put in place to help the restaurant industry from shutting down because we had to have outside dining. Mm-hmm. Now we're back indoors. Now let's reevaluate the plan and see if we can just have back to the inside dining or those on the street that are not taking up parking spaces or walking space. Because let me tell you something, David, a lot of people don't realize we have a financial ecosystem. And one of the most important parts of that ecosystem is our bars and restaurants. Once you lose those bars and restaurants, then you lose those cooks, those dishwashers, those busboys and girls. Then you lose people who are purchasing food from you to cook in their restaurants and our supermarkets. So we're connected to an entire ecosystem. We had to stabilize our restaurants. Now that they're back open, we can reevaluate how much street space we have to use so we can move back to a level of normality. But we had to make that move to really save our restaurant industry, or we would have lost a major impact even outside the restaurant.
Sir, now I want to get into a serious question that when I hear about it, it bothers me about you. And I guess it might bother a lot of other people. Like, why was it important for you to show where you lived?
And because let me tell you what's happening, brother. That's such an important question because I'm a private person, right. David. And back when my son was about 7 days old, someone shot out my car windows. They called my name. I looked over and I saw they were carrying an automatic weapon. And I hit the gas fast enough that instead of shooting me, they shot the back windows of the car. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I said, I was at the height of 100 blacks in law enforcement who care. And I was concerned that, my son was going to lose his dad due to my advocacy. And I really just had him stay in Queens with his mom. And I just sort of did not want to put him in that position. I remained private because of that. Mm-hmm. And I never let anyone in my home. I try to be as off-key as possible. But when Andrew Yang came out and lied and said Eric lived in New Jersey, if I didn't put an end to that right away, that would have engulfed this entire next 10, 11 days of the campaign. Mm-hmm. And so I said, let me put an end to that. You can come and see where I live because I don't have anything to hide. And that was the attempt that they wanted to do to sidetrack the entire campaign. Now, keep in mind, David, they got people following me everywhere I go. They know where I live. But listen, I'm an ex-cop. I know what surveillance looks like. So I know when people are trailing me and following me. So they knew I did not live in Jersey, but they wanted to put it out in the universe. And you know how folks are, man. They don't give a black man a benefit of the doubt. They buy on right away to whatever they hear. So I said, listen, you guys say I live in New Jersey. Come to my house and you can see exactly where I live and hear from my neighbors who I am. Because I had to put an end to that right away. If not, that would have been going on for another 2 weeks up to the election day.
Right.
And we would have lost this election based on a rumor. So I said, let me end this madness right now.
Okay, let's bring one more thing up. I've heard a lot of talk about you being investigated. I mean, how do you respond to persons who say, well, Eric Adams is being investigated? By whom and for what?
Think about this for a moment, brother. I don't know a time that a high-profile black man is not going to be under scrutiny. Dr. King was under scrutiny. Malcolm was under scrutiny. Sojourner Truth was under scrutiny. I mean, once you put yourself out there and you're high profile and you're pushing against racism, you are always under scrutiny. I've been under scrutiny from my days in the police department. The NYPD had me under surveillance for several years, following me around when I was with 100 Blacks in law enforcement. I was always under scrutiny. Remember, before I left the police department, they tried to fire me. So this is part of being vocal and an advocate for change in our city and in our country. That's par for course if you're going to be vocal. But they keep coming back with the same thing. Eric did nothing wrong. And so what Andrew Yang is trying to do, brother, he's trying to play into the negative stereotypes of black men, that black men are criminals. See, here goes the black guy. Here, remember when they darkened the face of O.J. Simpson on that Time magazine cover? Mm-hmm. This is the Willie Horton method of demonizing black men in this country. And he's playing into that demonization of black men. But no matter what he tries to do, the people in this city, they're saying, listen, we're not trying to hear your madness. We know Eric Adams. We know Eric stands for. We know what he represents. And that is why all these polls are showing that I'm at the top of the poll, because people know me in the city and they know the level of commitment I've had for over 35 years of fighting on behalf of people in the city, black, brown, immigrants, and people who have been denied.
Okay, sir, let's talk about immigrants for a bit. You want to be mayor of a city that has a huge Caribbean population. One of the things that are concerning in the Caribbean population is immigration, deportation. Yes,
and we're fortunate here in New York. We have what's called, New York is a sanctuary city. Mm-hmm. And we need to go beyond the sanctuary city. We need to ensure, number one, all of our immigrant populations are receiving adequate health care. They have a great program called New York City Cares, but many people are not aware of that. And I want to make sure people sign up for it. It's using our health and hospital system to get adequate health care for people. Number two, an amazing piece of legislation was passed in Albany that allows those essential workers that are immigrant to receive benefits that they were not able to receive, cash payments that they were not able to receive from the federal government because they were not citizens. Third, we need to make sure everything from reduced fare Metro cards to ensure we have right translation services, to ensure that we give those food benefits. When you are an immigrant in this city and you walk into a grocery store and buy a loaf of bread, no one is asking for your documentation to determine if they're going to charge you taxes or not. So we need to stop treating the immigrants in this city, documented or undocumented. They are paying into our tax pool. They are providing a service. When this city shut down, do you know the large number of people who are essential workers that were filling our store shelves, that was driving our Uber Eats, they were doing all of the things that was needed for this city. It was an immigrant population, and we need to show that respect to them, not just a hand clap, but make sure we give them a hand up, that they can be a part of the everyday prosperity of the city. And that's what I'm going to do as the mayor. I acknowledge the presence of my immigrants. I acknowledge their role in the city and how much they put into our economy. People who talk about have anti-immigrant feelings or thoughts, they need to look at the billions of dollars our immigrant population actually place into this economy.
What impact are you going to have in persons, the immigrant population, being pushed on to be deportated back to countries that they know nothing of?
There's certain things we can do on the city level, and there's certain things must be done on the federal level.
Right.
On the city level, it's going to be clear that the police department that I control is not going to participate with ICE at all. We're not going to allow ICE to operate in our courts. We're not going to allow ICE to go into our schools. We're not going to have any coordination between ICE and my police department. We're going to make sure we do not participate in that at all. On a federal level, we need to really encourage our federal lawmakers. We have some great federal lawmakers here in New York. We need to ensure that they push through on the federal level to stop that aggressive deportation that we're witnessing. Because you're right, particularly if you are raised here in the city, if you spend 20, 30 years, you deported back to a country, where you know no one, where you have no real roots there. It's just not the right thing to do, and we cannot allow that to continue.
So I want to bring up a scenario for you, right? I was watching something about maybe 2 months ago. It was about this lady. She had her child in this school. The child didn't do something correct, so the teacher took a paddle and spanked her daughter on her buttocks. Right? She cried. It was good. Now, it was wrong for the teacher to do what she did, but the mother was standing right there. The mother never said anything to anybody because she was scared that if she did, she would be deported back to her country. This is a fear. Persons who might not want to go to the hospital because they don't have the proper documentation. Persons who don't want to speak out because they don't have the proper documentation. And since New York is what it is, I really want you, sir, to assure these immigrants here that they're going to be treated with the utmost of respect and care and love.
And that's so important. I'll never forget when I was a transit police officer at the beginning of my career. There was a group of robbery teams that would go out and rob non-English speaking people because they knew they were afraid to go to the police and report it. Mm-hmm. So they preyed on them. And people prey on immigrants because of their documentation. You have you have attorneys that prey on them. You have employees who won't give them their full pay because they're immigrants. And so we're going to partner with our state lawmakers to make this a crime, not only a criminal act, but also a civil act, to find them at a rate that it won't incentivize preying on people who are undocumented and threaten them. And there's one bill that's been proposed in Albany now where it will be illegal to threaten someone based on their immigration status. We can't just say we're a sanctuary city. We have to live it out in every area. You cannot intimidate someone based on their documentation or what is their immigrant status or legal status. That's unacceptable. As I stated, the immigrant, documented and undocumented immigrants play a crucial role in the fabric of our city. And we must protect them the same way we would protect any other citizen.
Okay, sir, last question. I know you got to go. You've even stayed longer than you're supposed to. Court systems are not operating at full strength right now. They're saying that perpetrators are not feeling the full weight of the law for their crimes because the court system is not operating at not even 60, 70%. Is that factual?
Yes, it is. And they need to get back on track because we cannot allow someone gets arrested for carrying a gun, shooting a gun. They should not be out the next day because we're not ready to handle these cases. And I'm really concerned about the public safety of the city. Public safety, David, is a prerequisite to prosperity, public safety and justice. We must have justice and have proper policing and proper interaction. And we also need to have public safety. We lost young Justin out in Rockaway. He was a 10-year-old child. He was shot and killed. I sat down and spoke with his mother last week, and she's devastated. We have too many guns in our street, and just the reckless use of these guns. We had about 18 people shot over the weekend. That's unimaginable. And that's not the city we want to live in. 95% of the shooters are black and brown. 95% of the victims are black and brown. That's not the city I want to live in, and that's not the city I want our children to live in. We can't continue to lose our babies. And so these court systems must get up and operating, and particularly those who are committing violent acts. It doesn't mean if someone steals an apple, they should be sent into jail because they're hungry. We cannot criminalize poverty, but the violent acts, we need to send a strong message that this is not a city of gangs and guns and violence, and our children can't be the victims of that.
Sir, thank you very much for spending time with me. Good luck on your run, and you've got the last words.
9 more days, brother. 9 more days to determine who's the next mayor of the city of New York. I tell people all the time, David, I went through my entire public school experience, told I was dumb, told I was lazy, always having a D average, graduating from high school. Luckily, I sat in the library one day and heard a documentary on learning disabilities. And I realized I had a learning disability, undiagnosed. And I was able to overcome that learning disability. And I went from a D student to being on the dean's list every year. But I was lucky. And education can't be about luck. Our children can't stumble and get luck to be able to be part of this city. When you look at the fact that 80% of the men and women at Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma or an equivalency diploma, 30% are dyslexic. A third of our 18 to 21-year-olds read below a fifth grade reading level. 55% have a learning disability like I did. You should not have to be lucky. And I think the real crime in this city is not only what happens in the street, but what happens in the Department of Education every year. And I want to turn that around. You should have to be lucky to win a lottery to get housing. Yes, you should have to be lucky to live in the right zip code to get health care. You should have to be lucky to not have your son or daughter shot because of violence, or lucky that the police did not abuse your child. We can't be a city about luck. We have to be a city about opportunity. And no matter what anybody say, David, I went through a whole lot growing up. And it's time to have a mayor that has gone through a lot so he can help people who are going through a lot. And that's the type of person I'm going to be. I want to be the mayor of the city, and I'm going to need my Caribbean brothers and sisters to see my vision, because the life they're living is the life I live. We are the same people, and it's time for one of our own to be the mayor of the city.
Sir, thank you very much. Have a good night, and be careful when you're going to your house, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the call, sir.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Caribbean Fever 107.5 WBLS. I believe you're rocking. Well, you heard it. All the questions. I've asked all the questions. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams running for mayor. He'll be the second. If he wins it, he'll be the second black mayor of New York City. The first, the Honorable David Dinkins, who I was able to work alongside on many occasions. As a matter of fact, I went to South Africa with the Honorable David Dinkins. As a matter of fact, when I went to South Africa with David Dinkins, I took my mom with me. And that's when my mother says, this radio thing is not too bad after all. Caribbean Fever 107.5 WBLS.
Listen to WBLS.